The Biden administration announced new export restrictions in an effort to cut off China's access to U.S. high-tech semiconductors. These restrictions are part of the design that was carefully planned and systematically pushed by the U.S. government to curb China's technological rise at the expense of global semiconductor companies and U.S. chip firms that benefit greatly from the vast Chinese market. Hegemony. Washington's recent restrictions on the sale of chips and chip manufacturing equipment to China are an act of technological hegemony that hurts multinational companies around the world, while wreaking havoc on the highly globalized semiconductor supply chain. In 1945, Vannevar Bush, the U.S. presidential science advisor, submitted a report to then-President Franklin Roosevelt entitled Science: Endless Frontier. It was based on the fundamental principle of the autonomy of scientific research and the freedom of inquiry, which greatly stimulated the creativity of the scientific community. But in recent years, Washington has been interfering in global high-tech developments across the board. The U.S. Department of Commerce has extended its black hand to some of the world's high-tech companies, seriously damaging the legitimate rights of these companies. In September, the U.S. DOC asked TSMC, Samsung, Intel, GlobalFoundries, Micron, and other semiconductor companies to submit confidential business data such as inventory, orders, shipments, and capacity, and answer a large number of sensitive questions. If some companies do not respond to the request, U.S. Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo threatened that the U.S. government will use the Defense Production Act or other tools to force companies to submit these reports. Coercion and bullying have always been traditional strengths of the United States. By advantage of its superpower dominance, anyone who does not comply will face its malicious suppression. To achieve hegemony, Washington clearly does not care about undermining faltering globalization or putting the global semiconductor industry and supply chain at risk, thus revealing how reckless this declining overload is in its attempts to salvage its weakening position. For a long time, the United States has arbitrarily imposed sanctions on Cuba, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, Iran, Venezuela, and other countries, willfully provoked trade wars against many countries, and recklessly suppressed multinational companies such as France Alstom and Japan's Toshiba, as well as high-tech enterprises of other countries. No other country in the world but the United States is capable of imposing such widespread economic coercion on a global scale. What the United States is doing is both absurd and appalling. Havoc. Restrictions on semiconductor exports will intensify global geopolitical competition in the semiconductor industry and impede global economic recovery and innovation growth. The U.S. uses export controls as a tool of political repression and economic bullying, which not only hinders normal economic and trade cooperation between U.S. and Chinese enterprises, but also seriously disrupts global industries and supply chains and undermines the international economic and trade order and free trade rules. Whatever development path the United States chooses, it should abide by the rules of the World Trade Organization and the principles of openness, transparency, and non-discrimination, and should contribute to the security and stability of global industry and supply chains. It is the responsibility of great powers to advocate and actively promote sound, fair, and equitable international competition. The choice of development path is a matter for the United States. But it is not just cause to suppress China's chip industry through economic coercion. The U.S. bill bucks the trend of our times. Attempts to block the path of others will only end up blocking their own path. This is not alarmist talk, but the trend of history.